Are you having trouble with Maligaro, the Inquisitor in Act 4? Well, I know I do. The fight is really tough because all of his attacks deal really high damage, and most of it seems to be chaos damage, right? Or is it? I went ahead and put all of Maligaro's abilities in normal, cruel, and merciless to a test. There's a map version of him as well, which I did not test. I used means of high and low evasion as well as high and low dodge and spell dodge to verify which of his moves are attacks and which are spells. Furthermore, I used a hybrid ES life character with varying amounts of chaos resist as well as a chaos inoculation character, which is immune to chaos damage, to test the amount of chaos damage he really does. A lot of his damage is also fire damage, so I used an almost fire immune righteous fire character to cross-check my findings. So let's go through all of his abilities one by one. First, we have his normal attack. It does quite a large amount of physical damage and can be evaded, dodged and blocked as it is an attack. Next, we got his ethereal knives, which are a spell. From my testing, it does mostly physical damage, and if it does any fire damage, it is a small portion and thus very hard to verify. But as you can clearly see, there's no chaos damage on his ethereal knives, as none of the damage bypasses my energy shield. Another one of his moves is tossing out a bunch of traps. From my testing, they deal partially fire and partially chaos damage. Now this finding differs from some of the data main values we have, which indicate that they only deal fire damage. But as you can clearly see here, a portion of the damage does bypass my energy shield, as I walk over the traps. Lastly, Maligaro starts using a combination of Desecrate and Detonate Dead, as well as Eval Detonate Dead once his health drops below 100%. All three of these seem to be similar to the player version of the skills. Desecrate deals chaos damage over time to you, for as long as you stand on the created corpses. And both Detonate Dead and Eval Detonate Dead deal large amounts of fire damage. As Detonate Dead is not a spell, just like the player version by the way, it cannot be spell blocked or spell dodged. For this fight, I recommend a Granite Flask to mitigate his EK damage, and if you are melee, his hard-hitting normal attack. Capped fire resistance is a great idea, and bringing a Ruby Flask will certainly help you take even less damage. Try to keep moving so you do not stand on the desecrated ground for too long, but while running also try to avoid hitting his traps or getting hit by his ethereal knives. It can be very hard to find openings in his attack pattern, or even dodge all of his abilities, which is why he can be a very tricky boss to fight, and the encounter often ends up being a stat check more than a skill check. Don't be afraid to go back to town should you run out of flasks to refresh, and if you get into a situation where you have to get hit by one of his attacks, try to take the one you mitigate the best, while getting a few hits on him. I hope this was helpful to you, and feel free to comment on which boss fight you would like me to analyze next. Also, feel free to subscribe or check out my channel for more PoE content. I am Yoji, and I will see you soon.